Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going full tryhard. I'm running what I believe to be the strongest current team in the Open Master League that I have access to, and I'm going up against some of the best battlers that the Master League has to offer in the entire world. The team, we've seen it before, but I have made an adjustment. I have Solgaleo on the lead, Kyurem as the safe switch, I did switch back to Dragon Breath, and Dragonite is the closer, and I was able to climb up to 2689 Elo, so nearly to expert rank. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we've got some absolutely crazy ones. Hopping to the first match, picking up a terrible lead, Solgaleo into Giratina Origin. I save switch into Kyurem, opponent is going to respond with a Dialga. Here, I farm up past the Glaciate. I'm trying to obfuscate or hide the amount of energy that I have to hopefully trick my opponent into miscounting and allowing me to make it to the Dragon Claw, but perfection in counting from my opponent as they fire off the Iron Head on the CMP tie to the Dragon Claw. I did bait out the Dialga, so the good news is my Dragonite will not have to face it in the endgame. I was able to lower its attack, and now I can get an energy advantage on the Solgaleo. My opponent is barely going to make it to the Draco Meteor. You can't even see the HP bar on the Dialga as the Draco connects. I send in the Dragonite, opponent staying in with the Giratina. Giratina is going to fire off a charge move. Shadow Ball does quite a lot of damage, so I will commit a shield. They bait with the Ominous Wind. In the back, it's Ho-Oh. And in previous seasons, this would look incredibly good for Dragonite to close out the game. However, due to the Incinerate buff, the Dragonite vs Ho-Oh matchup almost feels like a neutral matchup now, and Ho-Oh, especially being up a shield, can be quite problematic. I'm able to land a Dragon Claw, get a Dragon Claw shielded, and I'm going to be committing the final shield myself as they go for the Sacred Fire. They do not get the debuff. I'm farming up and I'm firing off the Dragon Claw. This Dragon Claw should be grabbing the final shield from the opponent. I switch into the Solgaleo to catch the Brave Bird. Opponent goes for the Brave Bird. They go for an undercharge. They want farm on the Giratina. However, if their Giratina KOs the Solgaleo, then I get farm on Dragonite and I can outpace. So my opponent needs to not KO the Solgaleo. I'm actually going to go for an undercharge on the Iron Head. This gives the perfect farm down for the Solgaleo. One away from the Psychic Fangs. We get to the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs KOs the Ho-Oh, and we clutch an improbable win. The tough leads continue in the next match, Solgaleo into Palkia. An uptick of Palkia usage is what prompted me to switch back from Steel Wing to Dragon Breath. As with Dragon Breath, Kyurem can play the Palkia matchup pretty neutrally, whereas with Steel Wing, unfortunately, Palkia had a pretty sizable advantage. Speaking of advantage, my opponent has a massive one here, as Solgaleo is a complete wall to energy from Kyurem. Kyurem, despite the type negative matchup, is still going to be able to put in a surprising amount of work, being able to apply debuffs to my opponent and continue to whittle away at their HP. Another Glaciate is able to connect. Opponent nearly down to the red health. They are going to fire off one final Psychic Fangs to pick up the knockout. I send in my own Solgaleo, and I'm just going for energy. If I can get a nice energy head start, up energy, the Solgaleo can actually do surprisingly okay versus Palkia. And now, if they send the Palkia in, which they do, I can take advantage of the fact that Palkia, while very powerful, is quite a glassy Pokemon. My fast moves do absolutely nothing here. They're going to go for the Aqua Tail. I can tank that very comfortably, and I'm just going to continue to chip away with the Psychic Fangs. They're already debuffed. This second one is going to do quite a lot. Psychic Fangs is shielded. I send in the Dragonite. Opponent is debuffed. They get fully farmed down. In the back, it's Kyogre. And we're going to be able to take this game. Being able to bait out the Solgaleo key, as this sets up Dragonite to be able to sweep in the back. Dragonite continues to farm. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Another match, another lost lead, Solgaleo into Zygarde. I'm going to save switch into Kyurem. My opponent is going to respond with Rhyperior, and this is a matchup where I can make a play for switch advantage. I'm perfectly fine going down shields if it means that I'm going to be able to flip switch advantage and put Dragonite onto that Zygarde later in the game. Breaking Swipe connects. It unfortunately is going to lower my attack. My opponent makes it to another Breaking Swipe, so I am going to commit a shield here and make a play for switch, but the shield doesn't work. Rewind that if you have to. I click the shield shows up, and then it just doesn't work for some reason. Let me know if that's something you guys have seen before. I was absolutely stunned when that happened. They're going to go for the Breaking Swipe. I'm firing off the Iron Head just because I need to get rid of the Rhyperior, but without switch advantage, I'm probably going to be in a really difficult spot. I go for an energy lead on the Dragonite. Is the opponent going to send in the Solgaleo? Sorry, send in the Zygarde. They're going to send in the Zygarde, although to be fair, If there's a Zygarde, there's probably a Solgaleo lurking somewhere in the back. They go for the crunch. Thankfully, they do not get the debuff, and I'm going to be firing off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw connects into the Zygarde. Zygarde is just absurdly tanky, and there it is. I almost feel like I willed it into existence. There is the Solgaleo in the back. So switch advantage would have been everything in this game, but the game decided, no, I did not get to use my shield. And now I've probably lost it. I'm going to send in my own Solgaleo. If my opponent has Flamethrower, this game is just over. But they're throwing, and it does not appear they have Flamethrower as they go for the Psychic Fangs. I continue to farm. I make it to the Iron Head. Iron Head is going to be able to pick up the knockout here, I believe. Iron Head barely does not. They survive on 1 HP. Psychic Fangs is going to get me low. In comes the Zygarde. I send in the Dragonite, but unfortunately, I am not going to be able to make it to back-to-back moves before Zygarde is going to be able to pick up the knockout with the crunch. And I was so frustrated with the game that I accidentally hit the Game Booster button, so we got the Android Game Booster going as we do lose the match. Moving into the next match, and we see our first positive lead, Solgaleo into Zacian. This matchup right here is one of the reasons why I am running Solgaleo on the lead instead of something like Heatran or Rhyperior. All three can do a fairly similar job when it comes to this team, but Solgaleo is just so much better than the other two at destroying those fairy types. They safe switch into Ho-Oh. I'm going to respond with Dragonite, but this matchup is honestly not even that great for Dragonite now that Incinerate has been buffed. As if I don't shield here, they can shield once and Incinerate down. Watch this. The Brave Bird connects. I'm able to make it to a Dragon Claw, but they can shield, and now my opponent has made a play for switch advantage, and without switch advantage, this could get a bit tough. I'm going to send in the Kyurem, I'm going to shield the Sacred Fire, and look for the farm down. The opponent actually running Earthquake, so they're running some anti-Rhyperior tech on the Ho-Oh. They're, of course, going to be sending in the Zacian. Zacian now in a type advantage matchup. They aren't quite in Iron Head range, so I am going to go for a Glaciate to put them into Iron Head range, and I'm going for a bait. I'm expecting they don't want to lose this energy, so a bait is able to grab a shield. They're now going for the close combat. Close combat, not going to be enough to KO here. I let this through. What do they have in the back? They have Kyogre, and this game should be a win. My opponent, importantly, did not bank a move on Zacian before they switched out, and I can take that to my advantage. I'm going to send in Kyurem. My opponent makes it to a potential Origin Pulse. I am going to shield it. It is the Origin Pulse, and now I can just commit to the farm down. Because again, my opponent does win charge attack priority with the Zacian, but they did not bank a move. And I have the back-to-back Glaciates here, so I go for Glaciate number 1 and Glaciate number 2. So I lost switch in the mid-game, but through the power of energy management, Kyurem is a Zacian counter confirmed, and we take the win. Hopping into the next match, we see the same leads as last game, Solgaleo into Zacian. Again, this is a good matchup for the Solgaleo, so seeing some positive leads is a very nice change after those first couple battles. I'm firing off the Iron Head. Iron Head is not enough to KO, so my opponent is able to withstand that damage. They are at the back-to-back close combats here. I'm expecting that they're going to throw one more quick attack and go for the move. So I wait. I try and go for the catch onto Dragonite. My opponent holds onto their energy, and they're going to send in Dialga. So my catch attempt unsuccessful. I have to keep in mind that they should be, I believe, 3 quick attacks off the back-to-back close combats. They're firing off energy with the Dialga. Iron Head is going to pick up the knockout, and now I can send back in the Solgaleo. Going for the Iron Head. I do not want to take any more damage on the Solgaleo. Iron Head plus a Fire Spin is going to be able to pick up the knockout. In the back, it's Mewtwo. Unfortunately, I do have to throw on alignment here. If I tried to throw in good timing, my opponent could make a Shadow Ball before I'm able to fire off my energy. So I go for the bait, I'm able to grab a shield, and they have to go for a Shadow Ball here. Psystrike is double resisted. This will not KO. Psystrike not gonna cut it. They're forced to go for another Psystrike. Let's go, Solgaleo. Psystrike picks up the KO. In comes the Kyurem. In comes the Zacian. Zacian unable to make the back-to-back close combats. Back in comes the Mewtwo, and at this point, this game is won. I Glaciate, they shield. The only reason they'd shield is if they're going to try for a Hail Mary Focus Blast. So this is a very comfortable shield for me. They full send the Focus Blast, and the opponent concedes the match. Picking up a very nice lead in the next match, Solgaleo into Dialga. I'm very happy if they choose to stay in here. The opponent is going to save switch out, and there it is, another Zygarde. Zygarde feels basically inescapable at this ELO range. I was seeing anywhere between 1 to 3 Zygardes per set, and man, it is very, very annoying to try and get rid of. I go for the Glaciate, they're going to commit the shield. I make the Glaciate when they make the crunch, but I really didn't want to risk throwing on alignment, and if my opponent didn't go for the move, getting a free Dragon Tail might allow them to farm down and potentially make a play for switch. I cannot afford to let that happen, so unfortunately, at the expense of throwing on good timing, I end up going down a shield. I'm going to send in the Solgaleo. In the back, they have Mewtwo, and being down a shield is very tough here. My opponent is going to fire off their energy. It is just a Side Strike, but a second Side Strike is going to absolutely destroy my Dragonite. I'm firing off this Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw, more than likely going to be shielded as the opponent looks to preserve HP on the Mewtwo. Mewtwo has overfarmed a decent amount. Is it going to be enough to allow them to outpace the Solgaleo? In comes the Solgaleo. Mewtwo does not make the Shadow Ball, and this game might be winnable. Ironhead picks up the knockout. It's all down to this Solgaleo versus Dialga. As the Solgaleo in this matchup, you want to go for the Psychic Fangs right away. You need to chip away at their defense and allow your Fire Spins to do more and more damage. I will be able to tank a Draco Meteor very comfortably, but they're running Thunder, and that's bad news for the Solgaleo. I'm farming up. I'm going for the Ironhead. This is going to be close. Is Ironhead going to be enough to knock out here? Ironhead barely does not, but the Fire Spin does. And we take the game. We're seeing a very tough lead in the next match, Solgaleo into Ho-Oh. I do have 2 better responses in the back, so I am going to save switch into the Kyurem. Opponent staying in with the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh going to fire off the Brave Bird. I decide to respect it with a shield. If they send in Dialga, the shield is not going to feel great, and they do send in the Dialga. I'm going to fire off the Glaciate. Glaciate, of course, getting that guaranteed attack debuff, and I'm going to be able to make it to a second Glaciate before they make a move. The opponent is able to survive this damage and still probably make a play for switch, but they decide to shield. The fact that I got a shield back, honestly, I am perfectly fine with. I'm going to send in the Solgaleo, just go for massive farm. They're double debuffed, so a Draco Meteor, not even going to do a lot of damage. They go for the Draco. I'm able to tank that, no problem. I'm going to get a full farm down, and now when they send in the Ho-Oh, I'm going to be looking to send in the Dragonite. I know my opponent is still 3 Incinerates off the next Brave Bird, so not only can I send in the Dragonite, but I would be able to outpace. In the back, it's another Zygarde. You've got to be kidding me. I fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw does some solid damage, but unfortunately, I'm running out of HP here on the Dragonite. They're going for the crunch. Please do not give them the debuff. Thankfully, they do not get the debuff. I continue to farm up. I'm firing off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw into the Zygarde is going to be shielded. Dragonite continuing to farm. Dragonite able to make it to another Dragon Claw. Is this going to be enough to knock out? Dragon Claw does knock out. In comes the Ho-Oh. I switch into the Solgaleo, but I mistime it by 1 turn, giving them a free Incinerate. The Psychic Fangs connects, but with the free Incinerate, they can now make the Sacred Fire and get the KO. That is an absolute disaster, but Dragonite puts the team on his back, surviving the Incinerate with 1 HP of health, getting the knockout with the Dragon Claw, and taking the win. Hopping into the final match, picking up a positive lead, Solgaleo into Dialga, and the opponent is not switching out. This is a massive clue to the fact that they are going to be weak to Solgaleo somewhere in the back, and in this case, it almost always means they have either Zacian or Xerneas in the back. In that case, the opponent is going to try and defeat the Solgaleo by what's referred to as an overload strategy, where they're basically just having multiple Pokemon weak to it, but hoping that Solgaleo is not going to be enough to take out both of those Mons. So I decide to shield it. I'm expecting that I'm going to need Solgaleo for something in the back. They send in Giratina. I pivot into the Kyurem, and right on cue, there is the Xerneas. So we are able to bait out the Xerneas. I'm down a shield, but I'm in a position where I can potentially get rid of this Xerneas with the Solgaleo and then have Dragonite to be able to handle that Giratina. Moonblast, even when debuffed, is going to pick up the knockout. I'm over farming, and I'm going for a Psychic Fangs bait. I'm anticipating they're going to want to protect this Xerneas, and I am correct. This is a debuffed move. Even if it wasn't debuffed, I can survive it, but since it's debuffed, I am especially not going to be shielding it, and I'm going for another Psychic Fangs. They are heavily debuffed here. This is going to force the final shield. In comes the Giratina. I'm able to switch out, but unfortunately, I did take a Shadow Claw or 2, which means my Solgaleo is extremely low. I'm able to survive this Shadow Ball, but this Dragon Claw is not going to be enough to KO. I believe I'm going to be forced to give up the final shield here, as Giratina is able to make it to another move. It all comes down to this: can I make a superpower versus this Xerneas? Back in comes the Xerneas. I make it to the superpower, and it's a charge attack priority tie. Superpower connects, getting them very low. They're going to be firing off their energy here. Opponent hits no bubbles, going for an undercharge, but I switch into the Solgaleo and snipe with the Fire Spin. All in all, I went 15 and 10 overall today with the team, and I was able to climb up to 2689 elo, so right on the doorstep of expert. One of those sets, unfortunately, I did go 3 and 2, but I actually lost 2 elo. There were so few players playing Master League at this elos, since this is towards the upper end of the leaderboard, that almost all of my queues that set were like 100 to 150 points below you. And if you queue enough players who were really far below you in terms of elo, it is actually possible to lose elo for a 3-2. So that was definitely demoralizing, but overall, a positive day, going up against way too many Zygardes, and going up against the best players that Master League has to offer in the entire world. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.